I told the story because I write, and one of the ways that I deal with things sometimes is to write them down. I shared it initially with a small group of people on a list serve back in the day, to do with paranormal accounts, and these were people who I knew and trusted very much, and I shared the story. If you want to make me angry, accuse me of making up the Black-Eyed Kids. I have no reason to make this story up. In fact, this is exactly the sort of thing that would hurt my professional career. Correct. A lot of people have said, "Oh, I've done this to gain some sort of fame."
In the spring. You're a professional journalism. You went to college. You're educated. You're analytical. You've never, back in those days, the paranormal wasn't what it is these days.
No.
People didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And people don't even know what that term was.
Exactly.
Or what even, there wasn't even anything out there like this.
Right.
When you're thinking about back to that time and age and being the professional that you are, and I know you've encountered this, some people have accused you of making it up, but there is no reason in the world to do something like that.
Proliferated. This became, I guess you would call it, an early viral sensation, even before we had that terminology. Right. And it passed around, and all of a sudden I started getting phone calls and emails and all kinds of things from people, just this flood initially of people. Well, what are they? And I believe you, and all this sort of thing. And then of course, inevitably after that, the skeptics have the backlash. And
we know skeptics are always going to be skeptics.
Thing that I can do to convince these people. And especially there was a period of time where I just got tired of talking about it, and I kind of shut down. And I think that's when a lot of this sort of kind of spun a little bit out of control, and I wasn't around to help shape the message as much. And I don't know.
Like you were telling me earlier, like this period where you shut down, the story kind of got changed at that point, in different areas,
bit, yeah.
right?
I mean, game. You tell one person, you tell another person, you change one detail every time. I stand by exactly what I wrote. As far as I'm concerned, that's my official document of what happened, and I wrote it in the style that I would write any other thing. That is a documentary account of how this went down. So I was here paying my internet bill. That's what I wanted to do. And my plan was to just drop it off at the little drop slot here. One of these two spots, I think it was that one. And because the sun was going down, I was using the light from the theater marquee to write my check. And then all of a sudden, of course, I hear a knock on the door, the window, look out. Are accounts that go back decades. I mean, there are reports in the 50s. There are reports in the 80s. I mean, just because I put something on during the early age of the internet and was one of the first people perhaps on the internet to talk about something like this doesn't mean that I created it. I have no interest in creating anything that is false, that is antithetical to what I do.
Just an event that happened, and it, again, the viewers don't realize, I realize I'm talking to you, but the viewers don't realize that you were just doing a common everyday task that anybody would be doing.
Paying a bill.
And it was getting dark.
They had a drop slot, and I was halfway using the light from the theater marquee because I knew that the sun was going to go down, and I thought that if it got too dark, at least I could use that to jot my check down. And I was sitting there just writing my check to Camelot, which was my internet provider at the time, and
there they are.
Yep. I mean, it really is a sort of post-traumatic stress kind of thing, almost a response, where it flashes back into your mind and you're right there re-experiencing it all over again. And I don't panic nearly as much as I did at some points in the past, but there's still fear involved in this.
It does cause you to shake just, thinking about that night.
Well, I mean, I do believe that I was literally a razor's edge away from death. And people may think that that's dramatic. People may think that that's overwrought, but I don't. I mean, I was there. I know what I experienced. I know what I felt. I know that what I saw was correct. My emotions and my intuition certainly were not deceiving me.
And since that time, like you said, you've done numerous interviews, different perspectives. You've been on television talking about this.
And of course, the first thing they go to is that these contacts are available and people can put them in their eyes and whatnot, and that's true. But this was also a fairly long time ago when, you might be, Michael Jackson or somebody might be able to get some of those, for a video or whatever, with Thriller and his custom contacts. But he talked about, I remember reading an interview with that, how much that hurt his eyes to have those in for even just a few minutes. I mean, so these kids, I don't think that they're running around at the time, with a pair of $500 contacts each in their pocket, to just pull a prank on a dude in a car.
Those contacts, and that's what most people don't realize. And when I did my research, that's kind of things I started thinking about. I started thinking about nearly 20 years ago what even existed as far as Hollywood prosthetics, that they use in horror movies nowadays. And nowadays, you see these types of things. They're relatively available to the public. But back in the day,
No.
they didn't exist,
Not at
except to Hollywood.
Right. And so a couple of 9 to 12-year-olds wandering around in a parking lot are not...
Exactly.
Not gonna,
97.
Yeah. They're not going to have
Or
these
96.
things. There was this fear response that kicked in immediately. It was completely irrational. And at the time I thought, this doesn't make any sense. Why am I? There's no reason for me to be frightened of these kids, but I don't know. I mean, it was really just one of the most
Incredible, I guess you could say.
It was so frightening. I mean, it was just so absolutely frightening, and to know that you're being almost, I felt like hunted.
Now, a lot of our viewers probably don't truly understand what it is you might have encountered, and obviously you don't.
Right.
It was very, very strange. The common term that a lot of people use just for our viewers is what we refer to as BEKs, black-eyed children. Right. That's the term we use now to more or less label them, but we really don't know what they are.
It comes from my original story where I was being a little flip in the beginning. I didn't know what I would call it.
Referring to their eyes.
But people really locked onto that for some reason, and whether I like it or not, that's the official acronym.
What just to describe to the viewers here on YouTube, because there are other stories out there, other encounters that people have had since those days, and there were encounters even before you had, but it wasn't as well documented.
Yeah.
Just explain a little bit to the viewers. Obviously the eyes, but there were other features too that stood out.
Right. Well, I mean, there was a little bit of a. I mean, even though, like I said, there was the guy who was doing all the talking had a sort of olive complected skin. There was still something about it. I would say
And
a
you're
little bit
remembering right now when you close your eyes, right?
a little bit of a pallor about them. I mean, there was something that didn't really register. I mean, in retrospect, looking back, and I've known other people who have seen them who have said that they're very pale, or there's that sometimes they can even see veins and whatnot. But also there was just this, especially the one who was speaking, he was so practiced, I guess, in the way that he was talking to me. I mean, I interview kids all the time, and most of the time, especially even up into that age, they're kind of awkward and halting and not really very confident. Especially when you tell them that you're going to be writing down everything they say or whatever, or videotaping them.
The whole account.
And they don't talk like this. But he was just so smooth and practiced and whatnot. Hey, mister, we need a ride. A sense of, he was very direct, and there was this sort of sense of almost control about it. I mean, he wasn't initially menacing, but there was this sort of directness, about the words and the diction and whatnot. At that point, you really start to understand that you are in that's when I think that I started to become suspicious. Right. He's able to use them and manipulate them, and even something about the rise and the fall of the way he was speaking, his diction and whatnot. I mean, it was almost kind of quasi hypnotic in a way, and it was really at that point that I think that's when my mind clicked on and said, pay attention. Most of the time anyway. I'm a newspaper reporter, and I'm supposed to remember details and all these sorts of things. And so at that point, I really kind of started looking at these kids. The curly-headed one, of course, did all the talking. The freckle-faced kid who was in the background didn't say anything. And he kind of had this sort of blank expression on his face. Not that he was not expressive in any way, but I mean, he was just sort of hanging back and watching to see what was going to happen. He had an expression on his face as when I was trying to get out of there, and it was a look of absolute confusion, as if this just does not happen.
As if in a sense that they're programmed in a sense, but all of a sudden the program is not running the way that they want it to run.
Right. I mean, or things usually run in a certain way for them, and most people don't see past the illusion or what have you, or something. I don't know. I'm projecting a lot there, but that's the way that I feel that's what that look meant to me. It's like we've been found out. Only one of them spoke. And in my retellings of the story, I've nicknamed him the spokesman because of that. It's the curly-headed kid. So immediately there's this aura of absolute terror that begins to grip me. Why is not rational. They haven't even hardly said anything to me, but this fight or flight response immediately kicks in, and I remember being just absolutely terrified. Hey, mister, we forgot our money, and we want to see the movie, so can you give us a ride to our mom's house? And so I start questioning them. Well, how far away do you live? Oh, it's not far. Don't worry, it won't take long. And then he starts saying, he's gets the idea, apparently, that I'm nervous because he starts saying, well, look, mister, we're not going to hurt you. This goes on, and I keep getting more and more and more frightened. Also, I've noticed a couple of times I've caught my hand kind of trying to stray toward the car door. I asked them, well, what movie are you planning to see tonight? And they say Mortal Kombat, which kind of dates this. So I look
Very
up,
popular movie at the time.
So I look up at the theater marquee, and Mortal Kombat is playing.
Right.
But then I look down at my clock in the car. Okay, Mortal Kombat is already showing. It's the last showing of the night. If I take these kids anywhere and bring them back, they're going to see at most 20 minutes of a movie before it's over. So I know immediately that something is not clicking together properly. I looked away, and then when I looked back at them, that's when I saw finally what my brain was trying to tell me. Both of them had coal black eyes, completely black. Now, I felt like this cold rush into me but this wasn't an external cold. This was more of an internal cold that flooded into me in the presence of something otherworldly. And I knew that I had to escape. And if I didn't escape, I would die. I made some excuse. I said, sorry kids, I forgot something. I've got to go get it. I hope you find a ride. And I began to roll up the window. But he starts pounding on the window.
Just real quick, how many cars were in the parking lot at that time?
Hardly any. There may have been people at the concession stand. Freckle-faced kid in the background looks absolutely confused. And he says, mister, we can't come inside your car unless you tell us it's okay. I throw it into reverse, rocket out of here, probably at that exit over there. I look back in my rearview mirror. I can't see it.